If we seek to justify, to appreciate that great tempest of 1793, two sentiments will simultaneously arise from that serious examination: indulgence and pity for the individuals who were influenced by being so cruelly circumstanced, but also hatred, strong, durable, and profound, for the government of the multitude. But we will return to St. Maximum. About 20, at least, of the inhabitants were confined as suspected persons. I found them commodiously lodged, entirely well treated. My revolutionary committee was composed of artisans and workpeople, and an ancient monk, the only one of them who could write, and who, before my arrival, was at their head. I was fortunate enough to inspire this ex-monk with a species of enthusiasm for me. He had nothing particularly amiable in his character, but he was not mischievous. He followed me everywhere, and resigned me the preeminence with all his heart, and was as useful to me as he might have been prejudicial. I placed him, therefore, in my administration, and gained him entirely. The situation of the suspected was ameliorated, and some of them were let out to act in patriotic pieces in a private theater. And above all, the committee came to the resolution not to send any of them to the butchery of Orange. One lady, very amiable and of good birth, was more compromised than any of the others. She was the sister of the author of The Travels of Autenor. I had a great deal of trouble in persuading her to represent Republican pieces, but I would not give up so good an actress, and I almost forced her to perform the part of Junie with us in The Brutus of Voltaire. This little act of dictatorship, however, was the means of giving liberty to my victim. We thus passed the least terribly that we could that most dreadful year. We were small in acts, but in requital we were not sparing of words and addresses to the Jacobins of Paris. As it was the fashion to take antique names, our ex-monk took, I believe, the name of Epaminondas, and I that of Brutus. All the other members of the committee followed our example, and in our sittings we could have made a vocabulary of Greek and Roman names. They have in a pamphlet attributed to Napoleon this borrowed name of Brutus, but it belonged only to me. Napoleon thought to elevate his own name above those in ancient history, and if he had been desirous of figuring in those masquerades, I do not think he would have made choice of the name of Brutus. The good inhabitants of St. Maximum let me do as I pleased. They were as well satisfied with our theatrical representations as with the declamations from the tribune. The women were delighted that there had never been a single victim in our little town, and that we performed comedies. I believe, indeed, that at that period there were very few communes of whom they could say so much good. But a storm from the higher regions was about to burst over our heads. Barras and Freron were at Marseille. Some months which had elapsed after my arrival at St. Maximum had been filled with the successes and crimes of the Jacobins. In September, Lyon had fallen, Coyot d'Arbois and Fouché of Nantes had there courageously destroyed with grape shot the vanquished population, and pulled down with French hands the finest edifices of the second town of France, which 40 years afterwards was doomed to be again delivered up to the horrors of civil war. The army of General Carteau, with whom was Napoleon, was besieging Toulon. The prescriptions of the suspected, organized more widely by the law of Merlin de Douai, extended over 300,000 citizens, and consigned them without mercy to the dictatorship of each of the communes. In October, Marie Antoinette was dragged to a scaffold in a tumbrel with her hands tied in the midst of 600,000 Parisians, stupefied and trembling before a handful of brigands. In November, the assassins deified themselves with their mock worship of reason, for that reason which they endeavored to substitute for the gospel was but an idol bathed in human blood, which presided over their frantic orgies. The heads of the Girondins, of Bailly and Lavoisier, Those worthy interpreters of true reason were the first sacrifices of the new worship. Powerful members of the convention traversed the departments to prevent the rage of the populace from cooling. Barras and Freron were at Marseille. Our little commune vainly hoped to escape from their lynx eyes. Some miserable denunciator had informed them that St. Maximum had not furnished the smallest repast for the guillotine, and that in the house of our suspected, open to the families of the prisoners, they were sufficiently calm to make a practice of amusing themselves with the charms of music. They immediately took the resolution of destroying such a scandal, and 2 families of the Inquisition were charged to put us in the right road.